country music fans out there. This is Leigh with Coda Country on another episode of Coda Country Chats. And today we have a special guest from all the way across the world. No kidding you, 15-hour time difference here. I am so thankful to have on the show Alex Mather. How are you today, Alex?
I'm very well. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. I was just telling Alex before we logged on that I was like a little anxious and a little excited because maybe it's the time difference or maybe it's just I'm a mega fan of what you do, Alex. But I think the listeners are really going to enjoy our episode today. So I think we're just going to dive right in and start talking about the music that you've set out this past year specifically. And we'll backtrack to your album that you just released back in September. And it's called The Long Way Home. For the listeners out there, check out that new album that he has out. It's got some killer EPs or killer singles that he's released throughout this past year. Tell me, releasing an album is a huge deal for the country music world. So tell me about some of the songs on the album and why you decided to put them in this collection that you've created.
So we put them we kind of did, kind of what everyone does, and you batch write songs. You just write as many songs as you possibly can. But we got to a point where it was like, okay, these songs, there was kind of two albums worth of songs that were two completely different, songs that, and I was like, well, what's the most where does the growth come from? And there was some songs that I feel if I had have released in my first year, it was already polished, the whole band session, everything like that, and it kind of felt like I had nowhere to go. So we went through and we're like, what are the best songs that show? Because a lot of the times you don't get to see the progression, you don't get to see the in studio, the songwriting, all that happens. You just hear the songs and you never see it. So we're like, how do we put songs on this EP that are going to show progression when you hear the next songs that are going to come out? So yeah, we just went through and listened and picked our favorite songs that we didn't think were going to kind of overshadow what we've got planned for next year.
Of course. Well, and you talked about some of the favorites on the album. Do you have a favorite, or do you have a top three favorite songs that you have on the album? I think I have a top three, but yeah.
The Long Way Home is
definitely
my favorite. I'd say The Long Way Home. We did that one as soon as we did that one, I'm like, oh, I love this song. So it was one of those ones that as soon as that was done, it was like, that's definitely going on the EP 100%. No questions asked. And then Hurts the Best. That was one of the ones that we did that kind of took a few different turns here and there. It wasn't initially going to be on the EP, and then we redid the whole production, and then it became a single. So it went from literally not making the EP to being one of the singles, which is cool. And then Hell in My Heart was actually a very similar journey to Hurts the Best. I was actually going to cut that song from the whole EP. I was done with it. I love the songwriting on it, but the production wise, I was like, oh, I'm not this isn't the direction I want to go with the first EP. And my team were like, well, if you feel strongly that the songwriting's great, why don't we just redo the prod as many times as we need to get it right? And it came to a point where, I got a version back, and I'm like, okay, this is starting to feel like something. And then even I came over to Nashville and Arizona, where my management team are, and there's a guy out there who he had a strong vision for what the guitars should be. And so I'm like, all right, you got free reign. This song isn't going to make the EP unless something special comes about it. And then he came up with the solo that's in the song and the opening real dark chords in the song, and I'm like, okay, this feels like what it should be like. And then again, that's now the first that opens the EP.
The first, so. The track, that's crazy that almost didn't make it. That's. Oh my gosh, knowing that now, and I would say that's probably one of my favorite songs on the album. And it's so funny, before we hopped on this call, you posted one of those me versus my conscience videos. And so it's funny to hear you talk about kind of the production process of the song, because a lot of times I try to focus on like the songwriting, and I'm going to dive into some of those songwriting aspects too. But it's funny to hear like how, as an artist, you kind of like, I don't know, get in your head about how you want things to sound, or you're like, oh, that's not what I wanted, or oh, I wanted to do it a different way, um and so maybe that's how Hell on My Heart was kind of happening for you. But
Yeah,
it came across great. Yeah.
it was literally just like a conscience battle. Like,
Yeah.
and do you know what I realized? On my videos, I've written conscious. It's actually conscience, but like because I did it on the first
Oh my
video,
gosh.
I'm just sticking with it. I'm sticking with conscious.
I didn't even notice. I was just like, oh, that's funny because that makes sense. I don't know. It's, you know what? It's totally fine. No one's.
I
I
literally
didn't pick up on it.
I went on Google and I'm like conscious versus conscience, and I'm like, oh, it's definitely conscience. I've mucked up here.
Yeah, I'm sure you're not the only one that's ever like really thought about like, is this the one I mean or that? So no, that's fine.
Uh,
No, that's funny. That's so funny. Okay, so in my like binge listen to this album whenever it came out, you talked about Long Way Home, which is also top three of mine. By My Side is one of those that you put out a little earlier, but it's one of those that I really, really like. Can you talk about the writing process on By My Side?
Yeah, so we literally went through a stage where before we would write songs, we would just talk about kind of how we were feeling and what direction we wanted to go um, with the song that day, or if even if we wanted to write a song that was going to be good, or if I just wanted to write something that I was feeling at the time, but necessarily didn't care whether it had a great structure or great instrumental, or and this is one of those times where I was talking about through the music industry, it's really one of those things that has super highs and super lows, and it's very rarely just like a constant middle. It's either a lot of press or you're behind the stage doing the songwriting studio, not releasing anything, which feels
Right,
great for you, but from the public view, it's like, oh, this person's doing nothing. So,
right, right.
a lot of people might say, you're not doing anything. What are you doing? And then you're fighting that battle of this, but and then we wrote this song talking about that, where you need that person that kind of just keeps holding you there. Like, it's all right, you're working hard, you've written what 50, 70, 80, 90 songs. Just because
Mhm.
people don't see it doesn't mean you're not working hard. And then you also need that person there on the super highs to celebrate with, and be there for you, to kind of be like, hey, just because you're on that super high doesn't mean you can stop doing the stuff that no one sees. So yeah, we
Yeah,
wrote that song about just needing that person by your side to kind of just keep you grounded.
yeah. Wow. And knowing like knowing that you have like a team of songwriters that you work with, are they all based out of Australia, or do you do like virtual writes, or how does that work?
So I think there's only been three writers so far. There's me and Ernie, who's my manager, and
Hmm.
he's like, we're the two main songwriters, and how we work that way is
Yeah.
I'll write majority of the song, and then I send it to him to like more Americanize it, because we say like things like Ute, and like our trucks are different than your guys' trucks. So when I write stuff, he's like,
Okay.
oh, it might be better said if you flip it this way. And then like it's easier to rhyme forerunner than it is to rhyme ute. So we do
Oh
stuff
my
like
gosh.
yeah, and then we just kind of have like sporadic people who we show the songs to, and they might say, I really love that verse, or that verse you showed me yesterday would fit this song great. So then we
Huh.
just kind of have people who kind of have an outside view. They're not personal with the song. They don't care about how good the song does. They're just like, it's a good song or it's a bad song, and then they give us their feedback on it.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah. Wow. Okay, that's really cool. I'm gonna take you back a couple months because we've been friends online for a good time now. And back in May, we were both in Nashville at the exact same time, and like I had no idea. I think I posted on my story that I was at Whiskey Jam, and then you also were at Whiskey Jam, and I like had never met you before, so I didn't know to look for you. So I'm sorry about that.
That's
Uh,
cool.
yeah. Tell me, how often do you get to Nashville, or do you do a lot of just random session stuff outside and only make it there every now and then?
So kind of that way, do a lot of session stuff.
That way.
So I'm pretty fortunate that like I said, my team, they're in Phoenix. So my manager was actually just in Nashville for the last 3 days with the session players and taking meetings and all that kind of stuff for like the upcoming stuff. So I'm pretty fortunate that I got a studio at my house. So
Hmm.
I can songwrite here and track vocals here and
Hmm.
everything that I kind of need to do here without having to, one, run up the budget, and two, kind of
Yeah.
and be away from, like, I work with, and we'll get into this later, but I work with a lot of other artists as well and produce their stuff.
Hmm.
So I can really do a lot of my stuff on this side of the world, and Ernie can do that side of the world. And then when those two things come for a time for them to meet up, then I'll be over in Nashville. I want to be over there a lot more because I just love how like supportive and everyone wants to help you do things, and it's just a really good culture there to be around. So I definitely want to be there more than what I have been.
It's so true. I was talking with somebody the other day, another artist, who was just like, we all kind of want similar things. Like we all want to have a hit song on the radio, or we all want, 50,000 streams. But at the end of the day, it's this like community of, you know, enjoyment of the music itself, and let's help each other out and be there for each other. So I love that. And it's great that you're doing work like that all the way where you are. So I mean, it's a good thing that you're hanging out in Australia and doing that. And you just kind of touched on like being a producer and recording other artists and that kind of thing. So first of all, that's very impressive.
Thank you.
Just being a part of like the digital age and being able to track all these different studio sessions and then like I don't know, push it out to wherever it needs to go. Uh, Tell me about some of the other artists that you've worked with.
Yes, I've worked at the moment. Ashley Wineland, who she's out in America, and she's doing a bit of touring at the moment. I'm working on a few of her new songs, and then I'm fortunate enough in Australia to be working with some of the ones at the top, and Brittany Maggs. I've done majority of her EP and album, which is also my partner, so
Cool.
life easy.
Yes.
And I'm working with a guy named Robbie Mortimer, Nathan Lamont, who just got his first 100,000 streams on his debut single
Wow.
that we did.
Very cool.
That was pretty cool to see. And then I was pretty fortunate enough that I've had three number ones out here in Australia as a producer songwriter. So they were just
Wow.
like, and they come out of the blue too. We'd written the songs 2 years ago and had no idea what they were going to do or anything. And it's like, hey, we're going to release this
Yeah.
song. What do you think? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And then you get a call later, like, you got your first number one in Australia. Congrats. I'm like, well, thanks. Great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wild to hear about it like happening like that, just out of the blue. I mean, wow.
Yeah, literally
How do you
just got a
Yeah, go
call
ahead.
just got a call one day, like, congratulations, you've got a number one. And I'm like, I didn't even know
Oh
the
my
song was
gosh.
I didn't even know the song was doing well.
That's really incredible to know that though. I mean, oh my gosh. Okay, talking about success. And I know you recently posted that you have now, I think it's like 43,000 followers on Instagram, plus like 71,000 followers on TikTok, something like that. Um, Tell me, how do you think that your social media success has attributed to your songwriting artist career?
It's definitely done like a massive role. I'm pretty fortunate that now, everything's kind of based around social media, that I haven't just been doing it as an artist. I'd actually been doing like influencer and modeling stuff prior to
Yeah.
getting into the music industry. So I'd always been doing like social media was just like second nature. So when it
Yeah.
come to doing music, it kind of felt just natural to post what you're doing. And
Yeah.
that's actually how I ended up getting signed to my management team. Was they found me on YouTube and were like, "Hey, we like what you're doing. Like, have you got anything to send us?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I actually have a whole TikTok page and Instagram page full of content.
Wow.
I'd love you to check out." And it was perfect at the time that they were looking over my pages when I had a few viral videos going at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was
Yeah.
able to screenshot Rascal Flatts commenting on my cover, and send it to them like, "Hey, by the way," and they're like, "That's super cool." So it's great for exposure. Like there's nothing, there hasn't been, and there probably won't be another platform that you can post today and be a superstar tomorrow. Like it's very
I
crazy
know.
right now.
It is. And how fortunate as an artist, like, is it to be living in a world like that where, however many years ago it was, just a struggle to get somebody to listen to a cassette tape,
Yeah.
Wow, it's just awesome to watch your viral growth just continue to happen, because that's really impressive. So, okay, talking about like viewership online and then versus like a live audience. I know you had me post about a show that you had going on in Sydney a couple months ago.
Yeah.
What other live shows do you have coming up in the near future?
So we don't have anything locked in because we're trying to do
Okay.
all ages shows. Because last time when I played
Yeah.
Sydney, which was my first headline show, we sold out and it was
Yay.
18 plus, right? And I had
Mm-hmm.
people messaging me saying like I wanted to bring my daughter, I wanted to bring my son, or them messaging me saying like I was ready to buy like 15 tickets, and we kind of calculated what was done it, and we could have sold out a 500 capped venue if we had have done all.
Whoa.
So now we're trying to find all ages venue, and it's so hard. Like so many venues have literally said like, "Oh, we used to do all ages, but we don't anymore. We don't have the license for it." So trying to actually
Mm-hmm.
lock in these shows has been quite the struggle. But we're
Yeah.
trying to plan to play. We want to do. We've done Sydney. We want to do Brisbane, Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide, and then head over to the States and kind of do like a 10 show run just to see how many tickets we can sell out there.
Absolutely. Well, if there's anything I can do to get you out to the States and find some venues for you, I will do that. So,
Thank you. I
yeah,
appreciate it.
I'm down to help out with any of that. Of course, yeah. So, okay, I love though that you want to have, you know, an all ages show, or even, more all ages shows, just because I feel like grabbing at I guess the younger ears and the younger minds now that they're younger, and that they want to enjoy your music. I mean, that just makes them a lifelong fan. Especially if you want to cater to those, kids, parents, um, even like the older generation too. That's really important. And how cool is it that you're like trying to be more family oriented? Now, I do say like it's cool to have a good time and
Yeah,
do an 18 and up show, but yeah, it's nice to also do both.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
very cool.
I come from a background where I played a lot of festivals that are all ages festivals and that, and I still have followers today that may have been, pardon me, sorry, 16, 17 back then, and now they're like 20,
Mhm.
27, and they're still following my journey. So like my songs have
Wow.
progressed and they've grown up with it. So, I think
Yeah.
it's I kind of try and look at what other artists have done. And I think in terms of mega scale, I think One Direction did it so
Hmm.
where they literally targeted from like as young as can be to as old as can be, and the young
Yeah.
ones grew and the old ones could
Hmm.
relate to the music. So, you still have people today that absolutely fangirl and fanboy and squeal over what they've done because they literally grew up with them. So, if I can
That's so
if I
true.
can target that audience as well as target all ages, then I think it'll
Mhm.
be a good spot to be at.
Okay, this brings me to like two different directions in which I want to like gauge this interview because I want to know a little bit more about how your journey started with music because you talked a little bit about being an influencer and a model and so let's start a little bit with more background stuff and then I'm going to get into some other things that this brought in my mind. Go ahead. So tell me a little bit more about like how you started with music.
Yeah, so like I said, I was doing other things prior to music. Music was never the goal. Like I'd always played music and I'd always, kind of half sung and that kind of stuff and had music
Yeah.
around me, but it was never the goal to be an artist. I was a professional. We have a sport called NRL over here, and I was signed at
Okay.
15 years old and kind of was like the promising young kid to go on and play professional sport. Um, and then
Cool.
I had a knee injury, which they all tell you, like, make sure you have a backup plan because you'll get an injury. And I'm like, not me, never. Uh, and then it happened to me, and they messed up the surgery. So it was meant to be 6 months recovery, and it ended up being like a year and a half of recovery.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Mm.
through that year and a half of like doing rehab and getting the knee right again, that's when I started to sing, playing guitar. Like, I've been playing since I was 10, but just not singing since then. And I just started to add to it, and it was around that time where Facebook was going like insanely viral, and I was posting
Mm-hmm.
up covers to Facebook, and like I sucked back then, horrible. But the fact that anyone was listening to these things, I'm like, ah. Um, and so yeah, a few things started to take off and get a lot of views on Facebook, and I got contacted by a lady who was in Sydney, and I was living in where was that at the time? It's a little small town called Calliope, in Queensland, and I was living there, and I got a message, and she was like, "Hey, we'd love to fly you up to Sydney, and all that stuff, have music
Wow.
camps," and like me being a football player, trying to explain to my parents this lady wants to fly me to Sydney, to a music camp to write songs and stuff. And my parents are like, this sounds really dodgy. This sounds really weird. And so she,
A little
yeah,
scary.
and they're like, we don't have the money to fly you there. So she, like, how are you going to get there? And she's like, don't worry about that. We'll pay for it all. And so they flew to
Wow.
Sydney to be at this writers camp, and I had no idea what a writers camp was, or what like people make music together. Like I thought it was like you just do it all yourself, and so I got introduced to that, and that was just like instant love. It was just clicked from then, and I'm like, oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so that's
Cool.
literally then on. It was just that's when the whole posting on social media really started because I'm like, oh, you can
Yeah.
get places with this. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, helped you take off a little bit more. That's awesome. Okay, and now talking a little bit back, now that I know a little bit more about your background, what or no, not what, who are the artists that you listened to growing up that really kind of influenced your style? Because I know you mentioned Rascal Flatts, like commenting on one of your videos. Who were some of the ones that you would listen to and cover?
Yeah, Rascal Flatts was always a big one. There was always I always talking about we had a
Mm-hmm.
CD stacker in the car, and there was always Rascal Flatts, Alan Jackson, and Garth Brooks like all day long the whole time. And I always tell this same story because I think it's really funny. I didn't know who Katy Perry
Mm-hmm.
was until I was like 16, 17 years old. And like she at
Mm-hmm.
that time she was like mainstream radio constant, but all we were listening to was the CD stack that we had in the car. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I literally just
Mm-hmm.
grew up listening to and obviously Keith Urban because he's everywhere here. Especially through that
Yeah,
time of
yeah.
growing up. But yeah, the main ones: Alan Jackson, Garth Brooks, Rascal Flatts, 24/7.
That's amazing to know that though, because I hear a lot of the Rascal Flats in your songwriting, and um, I don't know. I think that's an awesome way to start. Okay, so wait, you didn't know Katy Perry at all? That's so silly to me.
So
But no, I get it because I guess like I don't know how radio and how well, I mean, I know now things are different since you were like 16 and 17, but I don't know. Are there let me ask this question. How about this? Are there artists who you think have a bigger following in Australia that should have a bigger following in America? How about that?
ooh,
Mm.
like, let me have a think. Let me have a think. See,
That's a tough one. I've never
I
asked that
think there's
question
some
before.
artists that I'm currently working with that are going to be big.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I haven't really listened to, like, obviously writing songs all the time. I'm not out there listening to other artists like continuously. But there are some people here
Right.
that I think potentially could be big in America, but I don't think they have kind
Yeah.
of I don't know how to say it in a nice way, but like have the balls to make a move and try be big there. You know what I mean? Uh,
Makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But they're big where you are. So like that's,
exactly.
maybe it's a comfort
Exactly.
thing.
Like they're doing well
Yeah,
here, they're
yeah,
paying the
yeah.
bills, they're earning the money, they're living a life. But I think it's more of a thing where they're doing incredible here and they could be there,
Mm-hmm.
but I know they've had the opportunity to go there and be bigger, but haven't taken it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost
Okay.
like I know people, but I don't want to call
Mm-hmm.
because I know why they are doing it. But definitely people I'm working with
I
now. Like
see, I
as I
see.
said, my partner Brittany Maggs, and even if we weren't together, she's got like 380,000 YouTube subscribers, and her
Wow.
streams are
Oh my
like
gosh.
insane. And so as soon as she starts to, and she hasn't even tried to focus on breaking the American market yet. So I think as soon as she
Mm-hmm.
starts to, focus on that, I think she'll definitely be one to, um, you know, grow over there.
Breakthrough, yeah, yeah. And I scheduled a chat with her too, so I can't wait to
Yeah,
talk to her. Well, okay, so wait, that kind of brings me to another question that I had for you. Oh man, I'm gonna cut out this like blank that I
that's
just
all
drew
right.
in this interview. Um, oh my gosh. Okay, no, I'm going back. So talking about um having a big following in Australia. I went to CMA Fest for like, I don't know, the first time in a couple years. And they have like a CMA spotlight stage. And on stage was an Australian act. I'm trying to remember his name. That was terrible that I like can't remember it. I'm bringing it up on the podcast. But there was like 200, and you gotta understand, this is like a very small stage. Like there's not a ton of people who come to this stage because there are other stages in the areas where you can like go and hear artists who are
Yeah.
more well known. um, there were literally like 200 Aussies just like flocking to this little itty bitty stage, and I was floored by the nationality of the Aussies in the arena, because it was like, I don't know. I think the fan base of country music loving Australian fans are just like, it's bar none. Like I feel like they're
Oh,
second to
and
none.
it's
You know what
getting
I mean?
crazier.
They're
Like you,
yeah.
I made a TikTok the other day saying, when I was in school, I used to get bullied for loving country music, and now those same people are buying tickets to go see Luke Combs and Morgan Wallen. I'm like, it's what's
Right.
happening right now is like insane.
That's so great though, because I get it, because I don't know, like where I live in like a rural part of America, and my state is like pretty southern. Like, you would think a lot of country music would like flow out of here, and sometimes that's the case, but like when I was growing up, that wasn't. It was like very taboo to like country music, and so maybe that's why I do this, is because I love country music, and I think I always have. And so when I find artists who really kind of represent that love back in the music they create, like I like to highlight it. And so that's one of the reasons why I brought you on the show today, is because I've loved watching, just from the short time that I've known you, all the things that you've put out and everything that you've done so
Thank
far.
you. I
So
appreciate
yeah.
following the journey. It's been a short one so far, but a lot has happened very quickly. So it's I appreciate you following.
I wanted to make sure that you got out like any kind of shout out, or like if you wanted to shout out your social media handles or anything else that you'd like to promote before we hopped off the episode today. Go ahead. This is your time.
Yeah, just at Alex Mather on every single social media that you can possibly find. Yeah, just the EP, The Long Way Home. If you're watching this and you haven't heard me, that's probably a good place to start to
Great place to
figure out
start. Yes.
who I am. Yeah, yeah, just Alex Mather Music, and keep a lookout for these shows because they're trying to lock them in.
Yeah, definitely. Come on, USA tour. I'm here. I'm here for it.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, audience out there, thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Coda Country Chats. You've heard Alex Mather, and I'm Leigh, and I appreciate you tuning in today. Have a good one.
Cheers, thank you.